Anyone can review a game after playing it. That's level 1 game criticism. And the problem is, it's actually not good enough to do that. If you play all types of games like I do, you've got a backlog a mile long. And the only way to deal with a backlog a mile long, other than someday dying with a backlog still a mile long, is to prune some of the mid games without playing them, right? That implies that you have to somehow be able to judge games without ever playing them. And this is especially true for Saros, because Saros kind of costs $1,000. You know, for me at least. Like I don't care about any of these other PS5 exclusives. They just raised the price of the PS5 Pro to $900 in the US. So you add the game, you add tax, and we're over $1,000 for one game, right? And and honestly, it costs more than that to me, because it costs the mental price. This is a serious thing, okay? It costs the mental price of owning an object that I hate. I just truly hate having this box on my desk that is completely redundant with the box that's under my desk, my computer, right? Which I already put a lot of time and money and energy into. Like, my computer can run video games just fine. Like, I just hate it. I just hate this redundancy. Anyway, Saros comes out on the 30th. Professional, quote unquote, professional reviews come out, I think, this Thursday, the 24th. But we're going to preempt all of that, and we're going to review it right now without even playing it. And if I say a single thing wrong, I will delete my channel forever. But more seriously, the point here is not to perfectly predict everything, right? It's just we want to use our time wisely. It's easy to fall into the hype and play a bunch of slop all the time when meanwhile there are tons of great games with zero marketing that you could be playing instead. And we would all like to be playing better games, hopefully. But on the other end, it's also easy to just take the stance of, I'm never going to play AAA games, like they're all slop, whatever. Sometimes they're actually interesting. So yeah, we're going to figure out with a reasonable degree of confidence whether Saros is going to be worth $1,000 or not, or worth playing at all or not. And the way we're going to do that is by first looking at Returnal, because this seems to be a pretty direct follow-up to Returnal. Of course, it could have completely new ideas out of nowhere, right? Like Saros could be appealing in some totally surprising way that has nothing to do with what was interesting about Returnal, but most likely if it's going to appeal to me, it's going to be because of the same core gameplay, which is kind of the 3D bullet hell thing, right? Which, by the way, the 3D bullet hell is such an obvious premise. Like, in a universe where the mainstream actually cares about gameplay and pushing gameplay ideas at all, like 3D bullet hell would have happened and been developed and been thoroughly explored like 20 years ago, I feel like. But, fact is, 3D bullet hell is genuinely unique at this point in time, or like it hasn't been done really well yet, as far as I know. So yeah, Returnal, I think, fell pretty far short of its potential as a 3D bullet hell. There are other aspects of it that are interesting and that you might like, but for me, I was hoping to get more of that. But maybe that's just because it was their first time doing this new format, and they're doing so much that was new to them. So yeah, maybe Saros could be more interesting. So what I did after I finished Returnal, both the main mode and arcade mode, by the way, I wrote down 8 areas for improvement that I feel like if Saros sufficiently addresses these 8 areas, we'll at least think about dropping $1,000 if they sufficiently address these 8 areas, okay? And these areas are basically all about emphasizing that core bullet hell appeal that I was talking about. I'm not going to suggest anything that I think would actively alienate their actual target audience, like completely deleting the story or completely deleting all permanent progression systems. Like, I might like those things, but I can understand that it would put them out of business if they did those things. And I would like for them to be able to keep making games. So I'm going to suggest things that I think would make the game significantly better for me and either be neutral or positive even for their main target audience, the more casual audience as well. And then after I suggest 8 things, we're going to go back and take a close look at the Saros previews and see what's up. See what we can say about Saros without playing it. And by the way, I do think they want to appeal to me, right? I think Housemarque especially, of all AAA studios, would love to appeal to me specifically. They would love to appeal to the more hardcore audience, because this is hero mode in, oh, sorry for the sound. Hero mode in Nex Machina. This is like intense hardcore action gameplay that like this is a hardcore arcade game straight up. And this was made by Housemarque a mere 9 years ago or something. So, there are definitely people there who care about the more hardcore audience. Anyway, the list. So eight things that I think could be improved in Returnal to bring out the 3D bullet hell thing more. So the first thing is less Souls-like dodging and more actual bullet dodging. I mean, it's kind of obvious that this emphasizes the bullet hell appeal more if there's more bullet dodging, but there is surprisingly little like real bullet pattern dodging in Returnal. And a lot of the most challenging enemies, a lot of the kind of mid-boss type enemies, they're threatening mostly with their melee attacks. Like they're going to teleport close to you and then they're going to do a melee attack that you have to dodge. And those are some of the most high damage attacks in the game. Like some of those attacks will like delete your entire health pool in one hit, almost. So it's such an emphasis in the game. It feels like such an emphasis. And I really don't feel like that has to be in the game at all. But even besides that, like when it comes to the actual bullet dodging, there should be way more micro dodging. Like if you play a real, bullet hell shmup, there is really a lot of like fine movement, small movements weaving through big patterns. Whereas in Returnal, so much of the time you're like dodging the entire pattern. Like the pattern is coming at you in a cone and you can just walk around the entire cone. Or you can use your dash, which gives you invulnerability for a really long distance. You can just dash through the entire pattern, right? So, for example, maybe there can be some kind of limitation on the dash. I mean, there is a short cooldown, but it's really, really short, so it doesn't feel very limited. But, maybe there can be some kind of minor downside to the dash. Like after you dash, your damage output is temporarily lowered for like 5 seconds or something. Like something that makes you want to avoid dodging unless you really have to, but also doesn't bother the players who are just playing for survival very much. It doesn't make them feel like like a 20% damage reduction is really all that's needed to make the high skill players want to try to micro dodge when they can. So that's point number one. Point number two, less looting. This kind of divides into two categories. Like the first category is like the amount of time spent just running around picking stuff up. Like the rooms in Returnal are pretty big and they're also very repetitive. Like there's only a handful of rooms in each area, like this unique rooms. And then the rooms are what makes it roguelite-ish is that the rooms are like connected in different orders every run. But the actual rooms are like you're going through the same, 10 rooms per area, like main rooms, main combat rooms. There's also the side rooms, but like there's a very limited number of rooms per area. And so you're navigating these same rooms over and over again. And once you've learned how to navigate them once, it's really easy and it's just nothing gameplay. It's just filler to run through these rooms again, and pick up all the loot. And there's so much, there's like 10 items per room in these giant rooms. And you're like, okay, I gotta go like loop down here on the bottom level. And then I gotta loop back up and just picking up all these like pebbles. You're picking up all these stupid pebbles and like compare, like sometimes you gotta stop and compare, like, and this gets into the other thing. So the first part is just less time running around looting, which also includes like running off to the side rooms, which often don't even have any action gameplay, and then back to the main room. Like just way less time of that, please. But then the second thing is like less time comparing when you're doing the looting. So one way that they could do this, well, okay, first of all, they should make it easier to see all of the information when you're comparing two different weapons, right? But also, I think this game would be served in general by something more like the Binding of Isaac build, like building your character in the Binding of Isaac throughout a run. It's much more like linear. Like you start here with the basic character and then you're slowly accumulating more and more stuff in your build, and it mostly doesn't go away. You just add more and more stuff to it, right? And that has other benefits, but just for this benefit, like you're spending less time comparing the entirety of your build. Like in Returnal, when you're comparing two different weapons, it's like you're comparing your entire build. Like everything is on these weapons, and every room another weapon or two drops, and you have to stop and look and compare and see if this one's better. And you're comparing like 5 different things to 5 different things, all the different modifiers on the weapons. Whereas what I would like to see is something more like you lock in your weapons relatively early on in a run, and as the run goes on, you add more modifiers to them, and you pick, does this modifier or this other modifier suit my build more, or neither, you know? And maybe sometimes you can remove things from your build, but in general, I think that just works better. First of all, it reduces the comparison time, but also it makes it so that you can make more intelligent decisions about your build, and it makes it so that you can get more comfortable within the span of a single run playing with that build. Like if your entire build is changing every 5 minutes, you just don't get used to that, and you don't naturally do. It's hard to do a good job taking advantage of that and playing around it, you know? It's kind of like ADHD gameplay. And when the comparison point is Binding of Isaac, and I'm saying that Binding of Isaac is the non-ADHD gameplay, then I feel like you're definitely doing something wrong. So yeah, less looting. That's point number 2. Number 3, get to the more interesting weapons more quickly. And by that I mean I shouldn't have to unlock all of the coolest like weapon effects and artifacts and things like that. Like some cool stuff, some of the more interesting stuff should be there by default. You know, in Returnal, you kind of slowly, by playing the game a lot, you earn experience with the different weapons and unlock more stuff. And that really actually punishes the highest skill players. Like if you're really good at the game, then unless you intentionally die earlier than you want to, you're going to get through most of the game with only the most boring stuff unlocked. By the time you finish the story, like you have barely touched the coolest stuff in the game because you just got through so much on those early runs. Whereas the people who are dying over and over again in the early game, they're unlocking more stuff every time they do a run. So they get to the cooler stuff faster. So yeah, I think there's not enough reason, especially in a sequel. Like Saros is basically a sequel to Returnal, and I think especially in a sequel, there's not much excuse for like having only boring stuff available right off the bat. Yeah. Number 4, some way related to what I was just saying about the weirder weapons and stuff. I think there needs to be some way to incentivize you better to commit to the weirder weapons and weirder items without killing the run. Like in Returnal, well, one way you could do this, for example, is just having 2 weapon slots. Like this is a very simple way to mitigate this problem significantly. If you just have 2 weapon slots instead of 1, that way when you encounter a really weird weapon, like in Returnal, when that happens, you're like, do I really want to risk this? Like I could very easily lose my whole run, because you know the weirder weapons are much more likely to have strengths and weaknesses, right? They're much more likely to be good against this type of enemy, but not good against this type of enemy. You know, good against little enemies, but not good against bosses. Good in this area, but not good in this area. They're more likely to have significant downsides that can very easily get you killed. Whereas the more normal weapons are more reliable. So if you had 2 weapon slots, like that would incentivize me to pick up the weirder stuff a lot more often. You know, it would make it so that I can commit to them without killing the run and worrying about hard counter enemies, because I can always just keep my regular assault rifle as a backup. So yeah, that's number 4. Number 5, maybe this is a bit of a stretch, but I would like somehow more connection between rooms. Like if you think about a normal bullet hell shmup, like there's a lot more flow through a level. Like one wave of enemies kind of feeds into the next wave of enemies. If the first wave like shoots bullets in a particular way that kind of forces you into a corner, then that kind of changes how you interact with the next wave, because you can't necessarily get positioned immediately exactly the way, like, you know, the previous bullets from the previous wave are often still on the screen and still affecting your decision making when the next wave shows up. And I would like you can't exactly do that kind of thing in something like Returnal, but for example, the adrenaline system in Returnal has this system where you gain adrenaline when you get more kills and then you lose it when you take damage. And that stays between rooms, and so it kind of rewards you for playing well on longer time scales, but it doesn't actually change how you play in the fights. Like you're always wanting to avoid damage whether you get adrenaline or not. So that's not really what I'm talking about. I want some kind of connection between rooms that actually changes how you play. Like, for example, some kind of time sensitivity, right? Like the cool version of this maybe would be like the zone, quote unquote, the zone from battle royales, where there's just like a death zone that's expanding, right? And if there's like a zone that's following you from where you started from the beginning of the run to all the way to the boss, like, this is not a normal roguelite with like a lot of branching paths. It's like Returnal's like fairly linear within each area. So you could do something like this, right, where there's a big wall of lava following you, and if you if you let it touch you, then it kills you instantly. It ends the run instantly, and so you're incentivized to move more quickly, which is maybe a good thing, and it's probably going to reduce the looting and stuff as well. But it's also good because you could have it so that if the enemies get touched by the wall of lava, then they just get teleported into the next room, right? And so that affects the next room in some kind of way, at least. And yeah, I don't know. You can imagine all kinds of stuff related to making the rooms connect to each other. But I wanted to talk about the timer thing a little bit more, because I do think that you could do it without alienating people. I think the average Returnal player might get too stressed out. People, even in something like Majora's Mask, people get so stressed out by timers in games. But I think you can do it in a way that's not alienating. Like, if you imagine, it's like an incentive, but it's not a requirement. Like, imagine late in the run, like 3/4 of the way through the run, you get to a door, or maybe even at the end of a run, you get to a door, and maybe it doesn't even explicitly tell you this is a timer thing, but it somehow suggests that, like, if you had gotten to this point without, or in a certain amount of time quickly enough, then you would be able to go in here and who knows what's behind the door. Maybe you get some extra rewards, or there's some extra challenge there or something. Like Binding of Isaac kind of does something like this. I'm pulling a lot from Binding of Isaac here, but which is kind of surprising, actually. It's not like Binding of Isaac is my favorite game of all time or anything, but it does a lot of interesting things. Anyway, yeah, so if you had some kind of thing like that, then you don't even have to put a timer on the screen, so it doesn't stress people out. And it feels super optional. It's like an incentive for the people who can handle it without stressing out the people who are struggling to survive. I don't know. You can imagine like enemies that are like laying eggs or something. And I don't know why I imagine eggs, but imagine there's an enemy that like lays eggs, and if you focus them first, like you're incentivized to focus the eggs first, even though they're not threatening right now, because if you don't focus them, then they're going to hatch and teleport to the next room and be a big scary extra threat in the next room. Like, like just stuff like that. These aren't great ideas, honestly, but thinking along those lines, I would like to see some kind of design work along those lines. Crisper movement is my point number 6. It just feels too AAA. Like there's a slow acceleration when you start walking, and then like there's a difference between like the normal running and the sprint. You have to like tap the L3 button to start sprinting, and there's like weird acceleration to that as well. And then like if you're leaning into the micro dodging bullets, like I was saying I wanted, that's kind of already pretty bad. But what's even worse, I think, is the air control. Like if you imagine this trying to become more of a hardcore later in the game, becoming a relatively hardcore like avoidance bullet dodging kind of game, you can kind of compare it to something like I Want to Be the Guy, right? I Want to Be the Guy fan games are like some of the most hardcore avoidance like bullet dodging games out there. And if you think about how the kid controls the character in your playable character in I Want to Be the Guy fan games, you have complete control over your left-right movement no matter what. Like no acceleration, you start up at full speed. You move at full speed no matter what when you press. It's very predictable, very controllable. You can micro dodge through bullets in midair because of how much control you have over that. And Returnal really does not have that type of control, especially in midair. Like in midair, you have so much momentum because it's, I don't know why. You have so much momentum, you can't just like, and especially like after you dash, you can't like then micro adjust after you dash, which I don't know, maybe that would be interesting after like 200 hours of playing the game and really getting used to the dash timings. But like, imagine you're dashing over some bullets and then you're going to have to land in between two dense waves of bullets precisely. Like, it feels really awkward when you don't have good air control. Whereas something like I Want to Be the Guy fan games, when you're dodging all the bullets in midair, it feels great. And yeah, I don't think this point is maybe not realistic. I don't necessarily expect them to fix this, but I think that would make a big difference for me. And then related, obviously I think they should just make the game harder in the late game. So this is point number 7. The late game needs to be harder. And I don't just mean a scoring system that incentivizes higher difficulty. And by the way, I'm not saying that the early game needs to be harder at all. I don't want to alienate the core audience. I think you can actually make the early game a good bit easier. Surprisingly, like you can make the early game quite a bit easier, and because this game is a kind of weird game to come to terms with. This is certainly the experience for me, and I assume it's the experience for a lot of people. Like the first area is significantly harder than the next couple areas just because you are not used to the controls and everything yet, and it doesn't really ease you in the way that you might expect. The late game needs to be harder for me to really, really care. And this gets back to something I've been saying a lot about, like the Slay the Spire Ascensions. Like Slay the Spire kind of has the right idea where the game works for a really low skill player and a completely new player who hasn't touched the genre before. It's a nice level of challenge at the beginning, but if you're really good, if you have a lot of genre literacy, legacy skill, whatever you want to call it, like you can pretty quickly just, get through those early ascensions in Slay the Spire as you were learning the basics of the game. And then, pretty soon you'll be at a level of difficulty that's actually hard, no matter how good you are. And eventually that game gets incredibly hard. So, it could be something like that. But really just any way to make it hard in the post game, and not just hard in a scoring system way. Like not just hard if you want to like do all these arbitrary things like killing things in the air that give you extra score in Returnal. I don't remember exactly what all gives you score, but you want mandatory challenge, right? Like you want even an expert player to feel like their run is at risk. And then last point, point number 8, less mini mapping. I want somehow for them to clarify the design around like threats surrounding you, right? Around the design for the situation where there are threats all around you and not just in front of you. Cause like, I don't know, it feels a bit fuzzy to me in Returnal. Like sometimes I get hit from stuff from the side that I feel like there was not a clear enough audio cue for, or like, so like, am I supposed to be like swinging the camera around all the time to see everything from all angles? Am I supposed to be really trying hard to like keep everything in front of me? I don't know. This is very broad. Like you could basically in Returnal, I feel like I have to look at the minimap regularly to make sure that things aren't coming at me from the side or from behind. And if I get into that situation, I'm just going to reposition, right? I'm just going to immediately reposition to a place where everything is more or less in front of me. And I think that's kind of the least interesting way to handle it. Like, you can imagine really interesting ways. Like this is almost like a mini map, but imagine like you have a second monitor and the second monitor is like a rear view mirror, right? And you can glance up at it and like see what's behind you at all times. Like you can do crazy stuff like that in theory. Like obviously they're not gonna do that in Saros, but like you could make a game like that and that would be a very interesting way of handling this problem. But you can also like, you can also have interesting types of audio cues and like flashes from the sides of the screen to like see stuff that is behind you. You could even do the like Bayonetta thing, or like a lot of 3D action games do this, where like enemies are not going to attack you when they're off the screen, which is kind, right? That's a design decision that's kind to new players or to low level players, but it also adds interest and depth for higher level players. If you actually push the difficulty, it adds depth because you're actually managing the camera to keep certain things off screen so that they won't attack you right now, right? And yeah, another thing that's kind of weird about this surrounding threats thing, like they could just do more. I think probably the easiest thing to do is just have it more often, like everything is just in front of you all the time. And when something is to the side, just have really clear audio or like flashing edges of the screen cues that you actually can dodge without looking at it. But one thing that would be really interesting that I came up with is, like, in a shooter like this, when you're aiming at an enemy, that determines where the camera is pointed. So you can't aim at one enemy and then move the camera around to see all the threats, all the bullets coming from all the different directions that you might need to dodge at the same time. But so one thing that might be interesting is like have it so that you can shoot an enemy normally, but while you're shooting an enemy, you can also like press a button to like lock on and like auto aim, so that, you know, maybe it only does like 50% damage while you're doing that, but you can like lock on and then move the camera around any direction, and then you're still shooting at this enemy from the side of you or behind you or whatever. And that way you can like focus on the bullets a lot more. This gets back to what I was saying about like more bullet dodging, just like more micro. Like it would enable them to lean into the bullet hell aspect a lot more if you could move the camera around a lot more while still shooting. Like, right, if you divorced the aiming and shooting from the camera movement to some degree, at least some of the time, that would be really cool. Okay, so those are my 8 points. That's my wish list for follow up to Returnal. Let's switch to taking a look at Saros. Let me just talk about how I do this, like, because this is something that I do all the time, right? Like I judge a game without playing it, and I decide whether it's going to be worth playing or not. And yeah, you have to be able to. I don't know. There's a certain cutting through the hype. Like I'm not gonna play the like audio from these like previews and stuff, but like when I was looking at them earlier when preparing for this, like there's just a certain feeling of hype that you get from watching these things that like it's easy to fall into the trap of like believing exactly what you're seeing is exactly what the game is going to feel like, and it's just not true. Like over time you learn how to predict what a game is actually going to be like, you know, what the rest of the game is going to be like other than what they're showing you, and imagine how you are actually going to feel about it. So anyway, the first thing I noticed when I started looking into this is this right here. Does anyone know where I'm going with this? Gregory Loudon was the director on this game. Now, I did not know who Gregory Loudon was, but the first thing I did is looked at Returnal. He was not the director on Returnal. And he's a writer. Okay? Now, nothing against this guy. Could be a great guy. I mean, could be a gameplay genius. But generally speaking, this is a big red flag, right? Like this, if we're trying to judge a game before it comes out or without knowing really anything about it, this is a big red flag. Like, and I actually pulled up his IMDb as well. Writer on Returnal, visual effects on movies. Like this, we have no indication here. Again, could be a gameplay genius, but for all we know, this guy knows literally nothing about gameplay. Okay? Like, you know, when you see like a game, when you're looking at who's directing a game, you want to see like someone who knows game design, and like or like often people who are originally programmers end up being good game designers because they understand games at like a certain systemic level from programming that you know, they have the right way of thinking about games, whereas a writer is just, sorry, I'm highlighting Harry Kruger. I meant to highlight Gregory Loudon here. Yeah, Harry Kruger is a gameplay guy, to be clear. Harry Kruger is a gameplay guy. He directed Nex Machina, Not criticizing not criticizing that. This is Returnal. So yeah, back to Saros. Yeah, it just typically the mindset of a writer and the skill set of a writer does not really lead to good gameplay. Okay. Anyway, let's give it a chance to impress us. So the first point was less Souls-like dodging and more bullet dodging. Now, you might immediately notice that you have a shield in this game. You know, I was talking about how the dash is kind of a problem. Like the dash kind of presents a problem in the design where it's a little bit too powerful, and I want you to have to be able to micro more, and the dash kind of destroys that sometimes, or very often. The fact that you can just dash through everything. And the shield is right, it seems like yet another thing. It seems like yet another thing that lets you just nullify the gameplay, the bullet dodging gameplay, by just absorbing everything with your shield. Now, it could be interesting. The shielding could be interesting in its own right. It seems like there's some kind of mechanic where absorbing different colors of bullets does different things, and sometimes you might not want to absorb different colors of bullets and stuff like that. And that could get interesting. We'll have to see how it develops, you know, later in the game to really know if they push it. And if they push the difficulty to a certain level, then presumably that will become interesting in its own way. But like, you're constantly using the shield in the same way that you're constantly using the dash, and that at least makes me sus. I did see some things that looked more micro-y, but it also kind of seemed like you can just dodge through everything still. So yeah, for the first point, I'm gonna say mostly no, mostly a fail on this based on what I'm seeing. Second point, less looting. So here, this is actually a big win. If you look at the minimap, there is a lot less junk. You know, the running around picking up pebbles seems like a lot less of a factor here than it was in Returnal. There's usually like 1 or 2 items per room, and the rooms seem simpler to navigate. And yeah, so I think it'll be significantly less time looting overall. I think this is a big win, actually. I did see some like uninteresting weapon comparing and stuff, but there was a button that's like see details or comparison details or something. So it seems like you're not going to have to go into the menu to compare weapons at least. So that's another factor that's going to, you know, create less time spent looting. Getting to the point number 3, getting to the more interesting weapons more quickly. Like, you shouldn't have to slowly unlock all the coolest items over the course of like many runs. You should have some cool ones at the beginning, some of the weirder ones. It seems like no, because they showed like a skill tree between runs. There seems to be even more like development between runs where you have to spend your currency. It seems like even more like a normal roguelite in that kind of way, which I don't really have a problem with that, honestly, the way that a lot of people have problems with meta progression. But yeah, it doesn't seem like they're doing any better on like giving you more interesting tools to play with, items and everything from the get-go. So I'm gonna assume no on that one. The 2 weapon slots suggestion, or like some other way of like encouraging you to commit to weird stuff without just killing the run, I think is also a no. I'm just not seeing anything. I'm just not seeing anything that's different in that regard. Number 5, more connection between rooms. They still have the adrenaline system. It seems to work exactly the same. Other than that, I'm not seeing anything related to time pressure and stuff like that. I mean, who knows if it shows up later, but I think it's probably safe to assume no for now. The crisper movement, I wasn't actually 100% sure. It seems smoother to me. Like he's cutting different directions here, and it seems a little bit smoother. It doesn't seem like totally full control, I want to be the guy style like I was talking about, but it actually does seem smoother. Yeah, I just want to have to like, you know, slightly tilt the stick to like micro adjust my position to dodge between bullets, and then like, you know, and I just wanted to feel super snappy and not have acceleration. But yeah, it seems like a little better in that regard. I don't think the air control is better, but maybe it's a little bit better. So we'll give them like half points for that. The late game harder, we can't really know about that, obviously. Like, maybe they're trying to keep it under wraps, but probably not yet is my conclusion. Like, in Returnal, they added the arcade mode after the game came out, so They could do something like that here and add like Slay the Spire Ascension mode or whatever. They could add something like that after the game comes out, but I assume if it were in the game by default, they would probably have talked about it by now, and I couldn't find anything like that. So yeah, for now, I think it's a no. And then less mini mapping, more challenge in front of you, you know, somehow clarifying the design around the surrounding enemies. No? I mean, so, you know, we just saw some like boss footage. Like, this is the kind of stuff I want more of, right? Like, the boss fights were the highlight of Returnal. Easily. Like, because you get stuff like this. You get the actual 3D bullet dodging in a focused way for a few minutes. But then the entire rest of the game is like, you know, enemies with dinky patterns surrounding you, and you just have to like get out of the way and then like get to a place where they're all in front of you, and then you can dodge their dinky patterns really easily, and it's just boring. Or it's like the Souls-like dodging thing. So yeah, it doesn't really seem very different in that regard. It seems like most of the game is still not focused on these big, cool bullet patterns in that kind of way like the boss fights are. No rear view mirror. No second monitor rear view mirror. Overall, I am not seeing a reason to jump in right now. Certainly not for $1,000. Certainly not. I don't see $1,000 worth of reasons. Oh, by the way, something that is interesting here, you know, I mentioned that I had this idea about like a lock-on aim feature that lets you like look around you more to look at the bullets more while you still target the same enemy and shoot at the same enemy who's in a different direction. They kind of did something almost like this. Like they made the aiming like less of a factor. So like, you know, you can see the reticle like snapping hard to the targets here. It's not like normal auto aim. It's like if you're aiming anywhere in this area, it's going to snap to this enemy, right? And I think that actually could be a good thing for reasons related to what I was saying. Yeah, for reasons related to that, I think that could maybe be a good thing. Like you don't have to focus as much on the aiming, so you can focus more on the bullet dodging. But I don't think it's really going to enable you. It's not strong enough to enable you to look a completely different direction, right? But maybe it might let you look up a little bit more. I don't know. It's maybe something extra to manage that's like interesting to manage, even if it's a very minor factor. So I don't know. That's cool. But yeah, overall, not $1,000 worth of reasons to play this right now. Maybe in another 5 years, another exclusive PS or PlayStation game will come out, even if it's, you know, PlayStation 6 by that point. And maybe I'll try Saros then. But right now I feel pretty confident that this does not need to be high on my list. But, you know, who knows? Like another right, like I said, judging a game like this before you play it is part of being a good game critic, or just someone who has good taste in games in general. But like, it's also important to have good sources of recommendations, right? Have people you know and trust who are going to play these games. Like I have a network of people whose recommendations I trust. Some of them are going to play Saros at some point. So, you know, even if I'm wrong here, if there is some secretly amazing stuff in here that we're not seeing, I will find out at some point, and I will get around to playing it. So
Saros.
This is not how anyone is pronouncing this, man.
Saros.
Saros? That is not like... But apparently it's like a... You know, it's a term in astronomy.
Saros.
Saros. I will not be pronouncing it this way. I don't think... Like, rhymes with hair loss? Like, I'm sorry. I'm just not doing that. Everyone is saying Saros, so I'm going to say Saros. But I think that's funny. An American pronouncing something wrong. Shocker.